There's a reason why some people manifest effortlessly while others remain stuck in the same cycles of frustration. It's not because the universe favors them. It's not because they're lucky. It's because they have something most don't: a deep, unwavering understanding of how reality bends to their inner world. The top 1% of manifestors don't chase, they don't beg, and they don't wonder if their manifestation will come. They know. And because they know, the world around them has no choice but to reflect that knowing. But let me tell you a story. Imagine Emma. She's read every book, watched every video, and repeated affirmations until her voice went hoarse. She visualized. She scripted. She believed she was doing everything right. Yet, her life remained painfully the same. Every morning, she woke up hoping today would be the day things finally changed. Every night, she went to bed with the same gnawing frustration. Why isn't it working for me? Emma isn't alone. She is you. She is everyone who has ever felt like they're missing something. But the truth is, manifestation isn't about doing more. It's not about trying harder. It's about who you are. And the top 1% of manifestors, those who seem to get exactly what they desire without effort, they all share something in common. Traits that aren't techniques but ways of being so ingrained that they become their reality. Emma didn't realize it then, but she was standing at a doorway. The moment she stepped through, everything would change. And it all began with the first shift, the first trait, an unshakable self-concept. Emma always saw herself as someone who is trying to manifest. That was the problem, because trying implies not having. And the version of herself who already had what she desired, that version wasn't trying at all. She was. The top 1% of manifestors don't see themselves as someone who is waiting for their desires. They embody their chosen reality. Neville Goddard said, "Change your conception of yourself and you will automatically change the world in which you live." Emma had been waiting for the outside world to confirm her manifestation. She checked for signs. She watched for movement. She kept looking to the 3D to tell her who she was. But the moment she realized that who she assumed herself to be was the only thing shaping her reality, everything changed. She stopped being the woman who was trying to manifest love. She became the woman who was already loved. She stopped trying to manifest wealth. She became the woman who was already abundant. And as soon as that shift happened, her world bent to match it. But there is still more to uncover. Emma's old mindset had been built on scarcity. She had unknowingly placed her power outside of herself, believing that external conditions determined her success. Every time she checked for signs, every time she wondered if her manifestation was working, she reinforced the idea that her desires were separate from her. But she began to see that reality was simply an echo of her internal state. If she wanted to experience a new world, she had to assume a new self. At first, the shift felt subtle. She started by adjusting her inner dialogue. Instead of wondering when her desires would show up, she reminded herself they were already hers. She began speaking and thinking as if her dreams were unfolding effortlessly. She no longer said, "I hope I get this," or "I wonder if it will happen." She said, "It is done. This is my reality." Then she adjusted her actions, not by forcing things to happen, but by aligning herself with her new identity. The woman who was already abundant didn't panic about money. She made financial decisions from a place of confidence, not fear. The woman who was already loved didn't seek validation. She radiated certainty, knowing she was cherished. One by one, things in Emma's life started shifting. People treated her differently. Opportunities appeared effortlessly. The things she used to struggle for began falling into place with ease. She realized that the external world wasn't resisting her. It had only ever been mirroring her self-concept. The real breakthrough came when Emma understood that she didn't need to keep manifesting. There was no longer a need to visualize obsessively or affirm repeatedly in desperation. She had become the version of herself who already had it all. And because she had changed, her world had no choice but to follow. She no longer doubted. She no longer sought. She simply lived as the woman she had always meant to be. And from that moment forward, her life was never the same. The second trait, absolute faith in her power, became her foundation. Faith isn't hoping. It isn't wishing. It's not saying "I believe" while secretly checking reality for proof. Faith is knowing. The top 1% of manifestors never ask, "Is it working?" They never say, "But what if it doesn't happen?" These thoughts don't even exist for them, because to them, the outcome is already done. Emma used to waver. She would affirm, but then doubt. She would visualize, but then worry. It was like planting a seed and digging it up every day to check if it was growing. But when she learned what true faith felt like, she stopped checking. She stopped questioning. Because the moment you assume something is yours, it's already done. And once Emma truly understood this, her mind stopped racing. The urgency faded. And for the first time in her life, she felt what it meant to have complete trust in her own power. But faith alone wasn't enough. There was something else that needed to change. She had to let go of control. For so long, Emma believed that manifestation meant micromanaging every detail, visualizing the exact way things should happen, scripting the perfect outcome, and obsessing over when it would arrive. But that wasn't faith. That was fear disguised as faith. It was her mind's way of clinging to control because deep down, she still believed she had to make things happen. True faith didn't require her to force or manipulate circumstances. It required surrender. Emma realized that the version of herself who already had her desires wouldn't be anxiously orchestrating every step. She wouldn't be questioning, strategizing, or overthinking. She would simply live. Because when you know something is yours, you don't need to chase it. So, she let go. She stopped micromanaging the how. She stopped scripting her future down to the last detail. Instead, she stepped into the feeling of already being the version of herself who had it all. And that feeling became her new home. At first, it was uncomfortable. The old habit of controlling things wanted to pull her back. But she reminded herself, letting go didn't mean losing control, it meant stepping into trust. And then, something magical happened. The things she used to chase started chasing her. The love she once longed for effortlessly found her. The opportunities she had once struggled to create appeared with ease. The wealth she had been affirming for months started flowing in unexpected ways. Because faith wasn't about forcing. It wasn't about pushing. It was about aligning. Emma finally understood she was never manifesting things. She was manifesting herself. And once she became the version of herself who already had it all, the world had no choice but to reflect it back to her. The third trait, mastery over inner conversations, changed everything. Emma never realized how much she was arguing with herself in her mind. She would affirm, I am chosen. But her inner voice whispered, are you sure? She would think, I am wealthy. But deep down, she heard, but look at your bank account. Her inner conversations were like a silent war, constantly contradicting her desires. But the top 1% of manifestors, they don't indulge in these battles. They choose the voice they listen to. Neville Goddard taught that inner conversations create outer conditions. The moment Emma became aware of this, she started controlling the dialogue in her mind. She stopped letting her old self interrupt. She started speaking to herself as the version of her who already had it all. And just like that, the war in her mind ended. But one of the biggest shifts was yet to come. She had to stop identifying with her past. For years, Emma unknowingly held on to the identity of someone who struggled. She believed she was someone who had to work hard to be loved, someone who had to fix herself to be worthy, someone who had to prove her value before she could receive. Even as she affirmed new beliefs, deep inside, she still saw herself as the same person who had always struggled. But she finally understood, you cannot become someone new while holding on to the identity of the old you. The version of her who already had it all wasn't doubting. She wasn't waiting. She wasn't replaying old stories of failure and rejection. She had already moved on. Emma realized that every time she engaged with old thoughts, every time she entertained doubt, fear, or memories of struggle, she was reinforcing her old self. And as long as she identified with that old self, nothing could truly change. So she made a choice. She let go of the version of herself who had struggled. She refused to dwell on the past. She stopped entertaining thoughts of why it didn't work before or what if it doesn't happen again. She committed fully to embodying the identity of the person who already had it all. At first, her mind resisted. The old thoughts tried to creep back in, pulling her toward the familiar. But she refused to engage. Every time an old belief surfaced, she replaced it with a new one. Every time a doubt whispered in her mind, she shut it down with certainty. And then, something incredible happened. She no longer had to try to manifest. She had become her manifestation. Her reality started shifting in ways that felt effortless. Relationships, money, and opportunities flowed in naturally. She didn't feel the need to force, affirm obsessively, or do anything extra. Because she was the version of herself who had it all. And once she fully embraced that, her external world had no choice but to reflect it back to her. The fourth trait, emotional regulation and detachment, set her free. The old Emma would react. If things didn't go her way, she would spiral. If she saw something she didn't like in her 3D, she would panic. She didn't realize that every time she reacted, she was reaffirming the old story. But the top 1%, they don't react to circumstances. They remain steady, unshaken, detached. Neville said, be still and know that you are God. And that's what Emma did. She saw things she didn't like. But instead of reacting, she reminded herself, this is just an old reflection. She felt doubts creep in. But instead of indulging them, she reminded herself, the end is already mine. And because she no longer gave energy to the unwanted, it lost power over her. But there was one final realization that tied everything together. She understood that it was never about getting anything, it was about being. For so long, Emma thought manifestation was about making things happen. She believed she had to affirm, visualize, and control her thoughts to attract what she wanted. But in the end, she realized that the real secret wasn't about getting it all. It was about fully embodying the version of herself who already had it. The moment she stopped chasing and started being, everything changed. She no longer waited for the relationship to feel loved. She was love. She no longer waited for money to feel wealthy. She was wealth. She no longer waited for proof to feel chosen. She was already chosen. And that's when the magic truly happened. Her world didn't shift because she forced it to. It shifted because she did. She had become the version of herself who already had everything. And because reality must always reflect who we are, her manifestations flowed in effortlessly. Emma finally saw the truth. She was never meant to wait for things to change. She was meant to become the change. And once she did, everything else fell into place. The fifth trait, persistent and selective focus, became her guiding principle. Emma used to divide her focus. She would affirm for her desire, but still dwell on what she didn't have. She would visualize success but then complain about her current situation. She was unconsciously giving attention to both realities. But the top 1% of manifestors, they are ruthless with their focus. Neville said, "You must be willing to completely abandon yourself to your assumption." And that's what Emma did. She stopped entertaining any thought, any story, any emotion that contradicted her desire. She lived in the assumption that it was already hers. And because of that, it became hers. But this wasn't about forcing herself to think positive thoughts 24/7. It wasn't about obsessing over staying high vibe or suppressing emotions. It was about making a firm decision. I no longer feed the reality I don't want. Emma realized that her energy was like currency. Wherever she placed it, she was investing in that version of reality. If she entertained doubts, she was investing in a version of herself who doubted. If she reacted to the 3D, she was investing in a version of herself who needed proof. So, she became intentional. When an old thought crept in, she didn't fight it. She simply redirected. When her current reality showed things she didn't like, she didn't panic. She reminded herself, this is temporary. My true reality is unfolding. When emotions arose, she let them pass, but she didn't attach to them. She didn't spiral into old patterns. She stayed loyal to her new identity. And as her focus sharpened, something profound happened. Doubt disappeared, not because she forced it away, but because she no longer entertained it. Fear dissolved, not because she suppressed it, but because she no longer gave it meaning. Her reality conformed, not because she desperately tried to control it, but because she became the version of herself who already had it all. Emma finally understood. Manifestation wasn't about fixing, chasing, or waiting. It was about choosing to become the person who already had her desire, and refusing to invest in any other version of reality. And the moment she fully committed, her world shifted effortlessly. Emma never had to learn a new technique. She never had to do more. She simply had to become the version of herself who already had what she wanted. And now, the question is, are you ready to do the same? Because once you do, you'll realize that manifestation was never about getting anything. It was always about being the person who already has it. And the moment you embody that, your world will have no choice but to follow. I will meet you with another video soon. Happy manifesting.